Alafia, divine, all blessed, welcome, greetings, Habaragani, Harambe, welcome, Alafia, peace and blessings, salam, welcome and greetings to another episode of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes with the Divine Prince. Olodi, the scourge of the town, Alofa, the arrow shooter, Afi Alagbangbo, Daja Ijaru, your time to cause more confusion. Listen, and ye shall hear me in the winds. Know it is my thunder that gives a warning in the dark. Do not dare deny me through false tongue, my daughters. Do not anger me with fences of blindness, for you must run wild and free of injustice to celebrate me, and it is you who must call forth the storms of change. You are now listening live and always in archive at your leisure and to the Divine Prince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagun Oloye, Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my ever-living reality. It is crucial to the nation of my inner standing, my teaching, my walk, my works, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we are challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. It is my personal place of power and understanding, the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. If you agree, Ashe. If you understand, Ashe. If you're in the path of understanding, coming into understanding, we all say and share in Ashe. It is another day that we can be together in this sacred space, this squared circle of gods and goddesses for the revolutionary Hoodoo New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, now broadcast live here on YouTube Live. I am grateful and honored by those of you who do continue to support me here, who take time out of the middle of your day at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for this power lunch. In this squared circle of gods and goddesses, we share not only the secrets, the mysteries, the roots, the history, the tradition of voodoo, but indeed it is impossible to discuss any magical art, any form of spirituality, without discussing the basics, without discussing foundation, without discussing quantum metaphysics. So I often will move between basic information and complex information, sometimes both at the same time. And my students, my godchildren, my initiates, my friends, my family, other members, fellow practitioners of this tradition who also share this space with me, I welcome you. And also those of you who are still finding your way, who are still trying to figure things out. We have been talking for the last week or so about crystal. And there's a very clear reason why I want to spend so much time in that dimension. Because not only do we get to discuss crystal, mineral, stones, silver, gold, diamonds, and then how they translate into both scientific application, but also magical, spiritual, quantum metaphysical application. But also just in the understanding of that is a basic platform for which you can move forward in any other tradition. Some of you remember that I said in my very first show that this is going to be a space for both the active formal practitioner, but also those who are seeking just a basic understanding of not only spirituality and religion, but absolutely as it relates to voodoo. And so when we look at the formation of not only quartz, but DNA, some of us remember the songs about Jacob's Ladder. There's a hidden mystery in the song about Jacob's Ladder and this dynamic in which the universe moves, rotates, gravitates, has its being. We discussed white light and dark light. We discussed white energy and dark energy, not in sort of the overt color-based, racial-based understanding of us operating today, but we're talking about a much more pure, indigenous way of viewing energy and how we utilize energy. In the course of the last few days, I've had a lot of communications with individuals about, and I did make a short, brief video about many of us being contacted now by these perpetrators of the tradition, often showing themselves to be representing West Africa. And indeed, these people could be showing up from anywhere in the world and just using bloody ritual pictures in order to sort of further the idea that they are somehow legitimate and real. I talked about them not having a face, often not even having a profile picture. And then they often don't have enough photos in the body of their Instagram feed to even legitimize their reality, their identity, where they are, that they're even truly operating in these systems. And they are playing on, which is what I want to talk more about today, they're playing on this desire for, this need for, this thirst for something else that exists not only among African Americans, but exists among many people in not only America, but in Western world, UK, other capitalized, westernized uh, uh, societies that exist in the world that share technologies that we share, that share industries and food products and pharmaceuticals that we share on any given day. So there is a pattern, there's an energy, some might say there's a pathology that sticks to us, that follows us, particularly if we are not conscious of cleaning that up, removing that, clarifying that. I seek each and every day on my journey to be much like crystal. I want to be whole. I seek to be unfractured. I seek to be unpolished, unbuffered, undisturbed by man and mankind. We seek a certain level of perfection. We seek a termination, the idea that we're moving up Jacob's ladder, that we're moving up the process of any rising from the base chakra to your seventh chakra. I seek to be clear. I seek to be receptive, able to both receive, but also stand in my truth and project my truth in clarity. So also in the journey of the seeking, whether it be a teacher or initiation or a system, but even in the seeking, just going into the library and choosing a book, just in the seeking in the moment to choose happiness over negativity, over sadness, over the realities that exist, relative realities that exist, that are often temporal, that are often temporary, that are always in the process of reforming and rechanging. For indeed, we talked about all things being in constant motion. There's nothing that's not moving in our reality. Even at the atomic level, all atoms and all molecules are vibrating at every level. So there's always an opportunity. Eshu, Papa Legba, Ilegua. There's always an opportunity to come back to the center, to the crossroads, to the apex. Again, I use crystal to teach many things. There's a seed, there's a point of light, if you will, an apex, in which then all energy, all matter moves out from. First in 6 sides, formulating the 6 planes of our reality. Remember the 6-pointed star. We're going to talk about that a lot in coming shows because there's a connection there. There's a mystery there that I'm sharing. And then this point is often referred to as the 7th side, where these 6 windows form a termination, a point. So when we are seeking along our journey, we too must be clear about what it is that we're seeking. The idea that we're sort of lost in the wilderness and I'm looking for something, but I don't know what that is. I don't know where it is. I don't know what it looks like. You indeed do not know where you're going. And so you continue to wander. There are stories, myths, ancient legends about a people wandering in the desert for 40 years or more, looking for their reality, looking for a culmination of the reality that we perceive that we are operating in, the reality that is, and then the reality in which we seek to have, that reality which we would prefer. Those things are always operating in unison right now in this divine moment in time space. Past, present, future collide in this moment in time space. Our remembrance of that which has already happened, our idea of that which is coming, and then the realities of that which we sit in are always operative, but have its most potency, its most power right now in this divine moment in time space. So if we operate, and I know this is difficult for some of you because we have to get into the harder stuff that we create and recreate our reality. The idea that I might be drawing things, people, places, experiences to me that might feel negative, that I might perceive as harmful, that I might perceive as dangerous. But the idea that I am somehow in co-creation with that, I get that that's hard for some of you to grasp. I do. But we're talking about God level consciousness. Some of you are identifying as the gods. Some of you are identifying as goddesses, kings and queens. I'm not talking about earth level, base level, carnal level, first, second, and third chakra level stuff. And indeed, that is to be consumed, that is present, because we all must rise in order up the ladder. But we're also sharing 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th level chakra stuff. And so when we say we create and recreate our reality, then we have to put on our grown man jocks, our big girl panties, and you really have to sit in the idea, meditate on that, make that a part of your meditation today, and just sit quietly and just consider the idea. Play with it like clay in your third eye, in your mind's eye, in your imagination. The idea that you indeed create and co-create your reality. You speak your reality in the truth. Now, speaking your reality in the truth is not the same thing as lying. It's not the same thing. And it's indeed not the same thing as faking it until you make it. Now, sometimes when you're sad, when you're low, when you're broken, when you're depressed, when you're unmotivated, you indeed can put on a smile. And many of you do it for your spouses, for your children, for your employers, for your customer base. You put on that smile You put on that appearance, you fix your face, and you prep your hair, and you dress, and you fix a world appearance, something that you present to the world, not ever fully understanding what the world's perception of the reality is, because you can't influence what I think, feel, or say about how I see you when you show up. Yeah, I see your attractive attire. I see your labels. I see your look. But if your third eye is closed and you don't see anything else but that, and often when you are stuck, when you are operating in first, second, third level chakra stuff, basic survival, basic needs, me, myself, and I, that which I can hold and contain, that which is most gratifying. There are many positives and negatives within those chakras. I don't want to give the appearance that they're just negative, for indeed, we need basic survival. We need an idea of will. We need an idea of self containment. Indeed. But then we elevate that when we start talking about vibrations, tones, notes, crystals, interdimensional spaces. You're now talking about raising your vibration. Even if you have really no knowledge or basic understanding of quartz and crystals and how they work, just the carrying it around, you're now wearing it in your jewelry. It's going to raise your vibration. And so those things that can't exist in the higher vibration are going to shake, are going to rattle, are going to come loose, fall off, and come apart. And you then have to address those things. And we can sage them, we can smudge them, we can cover them up with sweet oils, frankincense, and myrrh, and patchouli. But at some point, you then have got to do the inner surgery. You got to do the work. And that's why you see me more often than not when I'm doing these shows, holding on to the laser quartz. Because the laser quartz, much like it suggests, focalizes energy to a specific person, place, or thing, which suggests consciousness. It's not like the piece of quartz that you wear, that you absorb into your energy, you know, that's been smoothed out, you know. We're talking about focused energy, more prophylactic, maybe prophylactic, luck, good fortune, that kind of energy. But now we're talking about doing surgery level work inwardly first, because any work begins first inwardly. And so just the idea that we are fascinated with crystal, and that we are purchasing crystal, and that we are using them in our tools suggests a desire for the inner work. And some of us want prosperity, we want fortune, we want to see our enemies doing bad, but we're not willing to address the work that comes with that. First inwardly and then outwardly. First inwardly and then outwardly. I don't want to talk away my show. You all know that I don't come here to hear the sound of my voice. If I wanted to just hear the sound of my voice, I could just do radio. I come here to interact, to connect, to share, and also to receive your questions, comments, and requests in the chat. I'm positioning things so I can see your questions better. I welcome each and every one of you, both individually and collectively. The God in me recognizes the God in you, the ancestors that surround you, I acknowledge. I humble myself before. And so I am honored by your being present in this space. And if you indeed have a question and a comment that I need to respond to publicly, do type it in large capitals in your chat so that I can see them clearly, and I'll be glad to answer and respond. Dark Soul Jua, Now, please forgive me. I had to look at the truths within the question that you're asking me right now. You want a crystal charge with Baron Samedi. What crystal do you suggest for him? Okay. First, there are two scientists here at work. There's Voodoo, and when you say Baron Samedi, you're speaking a very specific type of voodoo. You're speaking a very specific deity. And Baron represents the realm of the dead, the realm of the dead. Now, in Haitian voodoo, that is often referred to as Gede. Gede. And Gede, unlike Egungun, for instance, in Yoruba, Egun, meaning the dead, Gede in Haitian voodoo or Haitian Creole, meaning the dead. But Egungun, meaning your elevated dead, your acknowledged dead that did well in life, continues to do well on the other side, influencing us in all areas of our existence. Gede represents the dead, like Egun represents the dead, but it's not necessarily contingent on elevated dead. Gede, unlike Egungun, is not invited to voodoo ceremony. We don't build shrine to invoke Gede. We build shrine to placate Gede. And often in not only Haitian voodoo, Louisiana voodoo, Catholicism, you see a placation, an acknowledgement, a feeding of the dead. November 1st, All Saints, November 2nd, All Souls Day. Um, it's given various names in various communities around the world. Day of the Dead, um, which I can't say in Spanish for some reason right now, in Mexico, and many other traditions, India, around the world. So Gede is not invited to Haitian ceremonies. Gede show up uninvited. Gede show up dirty, not necessarily clean because they represent the dead. They've come out of the ground. Um, they have on shades with one eye missing, one lens missing, suggesting the day and the night, the living and the dead, seeing between the worlds. They curse. They gyrate in very sexual manners. They represent things that are often unhealed, unresolved in the family. And indeed, if you're working with Gede and you have that such a strong relationship to Gede, he's showing up because there's something unhealed and unresolved, maybe within you, but it absolutely has a root tie to your family. So the idea, we see the crystal just like Orisha, just like Loa, as a living thing. So the idea of invoking the dead into a living thing. We don't mix life and death in voodoo, in Ifa, in any of the ATR tradition. Indeed, your ancestral shrine should be separate from your Loa, should be separate from your Orisha, should be separate from your living ritual work. We honor and acknowledge the dead in voodoo, and it's very different and very specific from Gede. Understand, Gede can be beneficial. Gede is helpful. Gede is necessary. Gede is, to some degree, Legba in the underworld, in between the realms, in the realm of the dead, if you will, assisting people to cross over into the realm of the dead. Legba's job, Eshu's job, is not to assist people into crossing over into the realm of the dead, but to other realms and to the realm of the living. So the idea of invoking Gede into a crystal, that doesn't quite connect. Um, Even so, your denser stones, granite, marble, much like you would see in a cemetery. Your denser forms of quartz, rose quartz. Many of you have seen quartz and rose quartz in your everyday lives and just didn't know it because it wasn't polished or pretty or crystallized, but it's often in mass forms, block forms, cut forms, polished forms. Um, Onyx, for instance, is an earth stone. Now, when we talk about the living, talk about the dead, but I'm now talking about elements. Um, Earth does not always equate with the dead either. We know we need vibrant, dark, moist soil in order to then birth life. But when we think of the dead, we think of decay. We think of things putrefying and breaking down to then reemerge in another form, as food, if you will, for another form, another dimension of reality. So I appreciate that question, Dark Soul Jua. But you really ain't trying to invoke Baron, not necessarily into a crystal. Um, you invoke Baron into things that represent the dead, tombstones and things of that nature. Um, Even the shrine for Baron in many traditions is often much darker than what we would see for Eguns and ancestors outright. But I certainly appreciate the question. Thank you, Uncle Glenn. All is a blessing. I certainly appreciate and welcome you to the group. I certainly appreciate you for being present. I welcome each and every one of you and your questions. Please don't be afraid to ask your questions, your comments, your criticisms. Bring that to this space only in the need and the desire for clarity and for understanding. I certainly welcome each and every one of you individually and personally. So if you have questions, type them in the capital letters, and I'll be more than happy to respond. Centuitive Gems, thank you so much. Dark Girl Tantra, Martha Martinez, greetings and salutations. Divine Self Healing, welcome, peace and blessings. Um, Sunday Briley, thank you so much for being present and being a goddess here in this squared circle of gods and goddesses. I welcome your questions, your comments, type them in capital letters. I'll be more than happy to respond to them. Um, I did talk for 20 minutes, so I'm taking just a second here to scroll back up and make sure that I haven't missed anyone. If I have missed your name or your question, forgive me. Just type in capital letters so I can see it. Weirdo Hoodoo nerds, thank you. Greetings and salutations for being present and being consistent here with us in this space. All is truly and indeed a blessing, Dark Soul Jua. I appreciate your motivation. Indeed, just some research, just a little bit more research, and maybe the two will meet somewhere in a new place in time. Indeed, we are often gifted new ways of realizing things. But crystal, as I spoke in a previous show, is really a living thing. We think of it as something dead or inorganic, much like wood after it's been broken away from the tree and the sap and the life has eventually evaporated away, been removed from the product. Well, crystal, like what's going on in your computer, is a much more active, vibrant thing than that, and its ability to contain, to receive, to store, to process information is now historic. It's now in our technology. Um, we are to some degree playing catch up in the realm of spirituality and religion, but we are also in some degree trying to bring a dumbed down society to a higher level so that it then can catch up to the technology. I'm a fan of alien broadcasts, alien technology shows. Indeed, so I do believe that there's also a higher level of understanding that we don't even perceive now about ourselves, about crystal, about voodoo, about God and goddess that we are still now growing into. Our physical forms limit our ability to contain a certain amount of power. Our physical bodies limit our ability to manifest and operate within a certain amount of power. And otherwise, we wouldn't have a experience with electricity and things of that nature that we do as humans. We wouldn't have to guard against protecting ourselves against that if indeed we were at that same vibratory rate as crystal, as light. I believe what our journey is to gain that, regain that, re-become that in our becoming light again, in our becoming goddess and goddess again, in our becoming cosmic again. We have to elevate our body at every level, but also our soul and our spirit at every level. I think many of the world religions that indeed do talk about afterlives and coming futures and the renewing of the mind and the body and the spirit are indeed making reference to us preparing ourselves to exist forever in a state that we cannot ultimately contain in the physical body as it exists today. There are physical laws that we all have to adhere to. And though Gede is seen as a supernatural figure, um, TV and movies and fantasy have sort of elevated him to a greater degree of fantasy. I think we lose context with what's organic and natural about these spirits, these particularly the spirits that represent Earth and humanity to some degree. Unlike a Loa, like Agwe, for instance, we see Beran as a deity that has some understanding about humanity and human incarnation and human existence. But his realm of activity is in the realm of the dead. So I hope I was able to clarify, answer your question, but also clarify it. And I certainly do appreciate it. Do we have any more questions that we need to talk about? I want you to type them in all capital letters in the chat. I appreciate you all for being present here in this sacred space of gods and goddesses for revolutionary voodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes. I want to be more than just entertainment. I want to be more than just a lecturer. I want to be more than just someone who fills space for you. And I want this to be an interactive broadcast. One of the reasons that I graduated away from doing Blog Talk Radio was I felt that many days I was talking and preparing volumes of information for 2 hours of a broadcast, and I didn't feel connected, interconnected with my audience. I'm also looking at the time that people spend in the show, viewing the show, listening to the material of the show. All those numbers show up in our analytics. So I know the time frame for patience, for attention, the attention time span for us in the West is not very long. So the idea of continuing to do daily 2 hour broadcasts that only a limited number of people are even going to pay attention to in its entirety is not practical. So I invite activity in this show. I invite activity not only in the room, but in this space. I invite your questions. I invite your comments. I ask that you type them in capital letters. It'll make it easier for me to see them without having to keep putting my glasses on, which then reflects the light from my from the room. Um, Crystals and pendulums as wonders. Pendulums, to some degree, is um, I wouldn't say that pendulums are a modern concept. The ideas of pendulums indeed have some ancient context. But indeed, the idea of pendulums in terms of spiritual work, psychic work, is new. It comes sort of from the New Age desire to, as we talked about in the previous show, reduce things down to a common, more sellable, more packageable, more marketable format. So pendulums don't have a long history in spiritual work, in ritual work. Um, Pendulums have a long history in architecture and balance, and so many other more science-based forms, but not so much spirituality and religion. I've tried pendulums, and indeed, I'm not against pendulums any more than I am Ouija boards. I believe there's some components at work similar in Ouija boards as is in pendulums. And pendulums makes it look safer. Pendulums makes it look easier to access and less dangerous than a Ouija board. But if you think about it, pendulums and Ouija boards are often using the same forces. Um, Now, with a Ouija board, you're consciously already projecting dead because we've been told we have a history of Ouija boards being used to conjure the dead, to open portals to the dead, and even other spirit realm, other realms of reality. And so we place our hands on the planchette when you're talking about a Ouija board, at least two or more people. And then there is that non-voluntary vibration that operates below our realm of consciousness that then is unified on the planchette in a Ouija board. And then the planchette is moved around. And of course, the Ouija board traditionally is marked with yes, no, maybe, hello, goodbye, and some alphabets and some numbers. The pendulum, in the way that you're asking about it, in the way that it's being used, is a little bit more modernized. You've reduced the element of wood, which is often what's the material a Ouija board is often made of is wood. And I often teach that that in itself is going to draw earth-based energy, disincarnate spirits, former humans, of course, spirits, ghosts, jinn that are earth-based. Jinn are earth-based. They don't come from somewhere else. They don't come from outer space. They don't come from heaven or hell, like a devil would, for instance. So all of that has been eliminated when you start talking about pendulum. But now you're invoking what power to produce what we often see as yes, no in pendulums, because you can't really get a greater sense of interpretation from a pendulum unless you're using a pendulum over a Ouija board or over some other tool, and the pendulum is then marking letters, marking numbers, marking words. But the forces at work in a pendulum are still very similar to those at work in the Ouija board. You have the vibration coming from your hand, and the pendulum has a natural swing that is responding to the gravity and the rotation of the earth. There's a pendulum, a giant pendulum in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian Museum. I believe it's the Natural History Museum. Um, it's hung from the very roof of this place. I believe it passed through maybe 3 or 4 stories or levels. And then you can go down into the basement and actually see the pendulum swinging. They have north, south, east, west, the compass marked on the floor there. And the pendulum, without the aid of humans, of course, is now set up to move with the gravity of the earth. So there's a natural swing, there's a natural precession, and you're able to mark time with that pendulum. But the usage of what you're talking about often is with your hand. and maybe even now some of the newer ones have some kind of stand with it. But you're now influencing the earth motion with human motion. So I would say it's even maybe not quite as reliable as some other forms of divination because of that error rating in terms of the math and the swing. There's a natural progression there that can be worked against with practice in using a pendulum. Um, but it's not voodoo. It's not Afrocentric. It doesn't have any indigenous roots that I'm aware of. And I'm willing to look deeper into that for you. But I think that's a great question. I really don't use pendulums. Um, Not really, not since in my early 20s when I early on was getting into studying many of these processes. But I certainly appreciate the question and your participating in the group. How to clean your crystal before you use it for the first time? That's a very good question. I do weird things when I purchase crystals, and sometimes the retailers don't quite get that. Don't wrap my crystal up in plastic. Now I understand if it's been mailed to you, it's a order from offline. You want your stone safe and sound when you get it. But if you're talking about uh, Michelle McQuayla, peace and blessings. If you're talking about walking into a store and buying a crystal, I suggest not buying it. First of all, if we're talking about crystal, now if we're talking about stones, polished, small pieces, you know, you're going to wrap them up, take them home, and then you're going to cleanse them in a similar fashion as what I'm going to suggest with this. But when leaving the store with something like this, I suggest that you never buy more than one at a time, that you can contain it, hold it, wear it, put it in your pocket. Maybe you get in the car and you're driving and you put it in your lap, but don't forget so that when you get ready to get out, it doesn't hit the ground. But I would suggest eliminating plastic absolutely. If it must be wrapped at all, paper, um, should paper or something natural, and then get it home and wash it with cold running water. I don't suggest taking your first time crystal, particularly for new users of crystal, to a natural water source. Mami Wata, Yemaya, Olakun will grab that stone and it'll be down the river, down the ocean before you can even realize what happened. So I strongly suggest natural, tap water. Let it run cold, not hot. Heat can shatter, can alter the harmony, the vibration, the tone of your quartz. Absolutely. Even if you don't see a physical crack in the specimen. I don't suggest a whole lot of salt, sea salt, anything like that, particularly not in the first time purchase. You then want to carry, hold, wear, work with the stone for as long as possible. Now, of course, that's going to be contingent on the size of the stone. The bigger the stone, the more you have to worry about breaking it, chipping it, dropping it, damaging it. A piece like this, you're not going to want to just throw down in your purse. Your keys, could damage this. It could, bump up against, gyrate against other hard surfaces and create damage. So you absolutely want to be careful with your specimens, just like you would a newborn child. You might even want to buy a particular pouch specific for the stone that you're purchasing. Now, some of us in the group, including myself, and including my beloved sister Wapani, we crochet our own stuff. And so I can hand crochet a pouch specific to the shape and size of any stone that I get. And then, of course, that then provides me an opportunity to create things that I can wear, things that I can carry. I have pouches that I actually wear around my waist. The cording, you know, the neck of the pouch goes all the way around my waist, and then I can tuck the pouch underneath my clothes and keep the stones safe. But you absolutely want to bond with, meld with the stone as long as possible. That is part of this cleaning process that you're talking about. Because remember, these stones can store energy. These crystals can store energy. You also want to smudge it. That means burning frankincense, myrrh, sage, dragon's blood incense, resin incense, and then allowing the smoke to wrap around the stone. You might even want to move the stone in this sort of fashion. If it's in your right hand, you want to turn it with the rotations and clockwise movement. If it's in your left hand, you want to turn it with the rotations and the counterclockwise movement in the smoke. And use your consciousness to project, because all of this also involves the first law of magic, which is the law of mentalism. Projecting, cleansing, pushing that which is not wanted, that which is not needed, that which is no longer beneficial. Because there are some things within the stone that you want to keep, that you want to hold on to, that you don't want to wash away, any more than polishing away the record. You also don't want to clear away what might absolutely be useful. But in the buying, selling, trading, commercial practice, many people are selling these crystals who have no spiritual knowledge, awareness, or empathy whatsoever. So yeah, you absolutely want to clear that out of your stone. Never use heat. I even strongly suggest against vibration. Tapping, rapping on your crystals can shatter them, can damage them, can cause great harm to the vibration of the stone. And then if you are a regular crystal purchaser, by now you probably have a crystal altar. You have a mirror, glass, because you shouldn't really keep your stones on wood. I don't suggest that, especially your crystals that you are working with, that whole program. Wood can ground them. That is also helpful in the cleansing process. So if you have a new stone, you've done the washing, you've done the smudging and cleansing, you now want to put it on wood. Wood will ground what's in it, take what is not useful, beneficial back into the earth, back into the ground, but it'll also ground those previous programs. If indeed the crystal was used in any way before you received it, it will indeed ground those programs. But then in the regular storing of your stones, you really want to store them on glass, mirrored surfaces, other stone surfaces like marble, granite. Um, uh, this is a stone that I use. It actually has mica and quartz naturally in the granite. We talked a few days ago, or maybe it was Friday, about government buildings and offices that often have this kind of material in it, that have stored programming in it, particularly programs of government, programs of power, programs of justice that we all acknowledge each and every day. So you want to keep your stones, particularly your crystal, because we are talking about crystal, on that sort of surface to then guard and protect it from picking up anything outside of what you then program into the stone after you've cleansed it. I hope I've thoroughly responded to how to cleanse your crystal before you use it for the first time. If I haven't, give me a follow-up question to that. You might also rub the stone down with a blessed oil, an olive oil, a frankincense oil, and then take a Kleenex and take off, the extra oil residue from that. And that's another way to really cleanse your crystal pieces for the first time, particularly your crystal that you're really going to be doing any serious personal work and or work for other people. Now, Dark Girl Tantra, I'm going to respond to your question. You're asking, do I consider a person a spiritual prostitute if the person respectfully and humbly wants to learn about several different spiritual systems? Okay, I find that question to be both humorous but also really serious and a great question. Coming from a strong evangelical Christian background, that was a question my mom would have asked. She would not have said prostitute, but she definitely would have asked and hinted and suggested that not that we were, you and I, Dark Girl Tantra, or somehow confused, but that studying all of this would lead to confusion. And in the earlier years, it was very hard for me to explain to her that I was clear, that I was focused, that I was walking a very specific path, a crystal path. And that part of that journey was that I needed to not only read and study and research and be exposed to these other traditions, but I legitimately, as some of you have done, joined many of these traditions. I've been a Muslim. I've been a Rasta. I've been a Hebrew Israelite. I've been a Nuwapu. I've been many other traditions. I've done other practices. I think there's no harm, Dark Girl Tantra, as long as you're being honest with yourself. You don't have to be honest with me about it, but as long as you're being honest with yourself about what you know, what you don't know, and where you are in these traditions, then you're fine. Now, in some of these traditions, particularly ATR, we're talking about taking a vow. I'm very surprised when, which is very common today, when I do get the stories of, I've got a hand Ifa, or I, been initiated here or there, this practice or this system, and my godparents are dead, and now I'm out here, which is not how a system works. There are other members of the family in the system. Me and my godfather, godmother, we couldn't communicate. So now I'm just out here. So in that sense, we have to go back to Eshu, Papa Ekwa, Ilegwa. And the trick within this trickster, we look at him as being this divine trickster, is really ego. It's really ego. It's when we get to the crossroads and we think we know, we think we understand, we think we're clear. And this obviously is not you, but in the case with many others, in that journey that you're suggesting that you're on, many others are trying to do the journey and operate as a healer or a practitioner or a leader or a teacher at the same time, and they're not doing it genuinely. So when you use that word prostitute, and I think about what a prostitute is, you're talking about someone who don't have no love. What's love got to do with it? It's about money. It's about giving the person, the customer, the false sense of being satisfied in the moment. And so that's, whether you're doing that with yourself or with other people, then yeah, that will be problematic. But if you're being honest with yourself, with the mentors and the teachers that you're working with or being exposed to, with how you then process and apply this information, then I don't think it's necessary to even consider that word. In a more historical context, spiritual prostitutes, religious prostitutes, existed in the ancient world in religious paths and systems, and they indeed were prostitutes in that They either possess the spirit of a deity, um, or had sex with men as a representative of a cult, a religion, or a deity, um, for much deeper purposes. That's what I think when I see that combination of the word. But just in the studying, the learning, the looking, as long as you remain honest with yourself about who and where you are, you're good. You're good. See with your eye, see with your third eye, see with your spirit eye, see with your heart. Some of us who consider ourselves consciousness, peace and blessings, adventures of a truck driving diva. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the group. Um, Many of us are so hurt, so broken, so angered, so embittered, and then we bring that into consciousness, whether spirit consciousness or racial consciousness or black consciousness. And so you can't see with your third eye without feeling. You can't see with your spirit eye without accessing other senses in your body, in your physical body, and in your spirit body. So while we're seeing with our mind, with this critical eye, you also must see with your heart and sometimes see through your own experience, which is what empathy is. To humanize somebody, I've been broken, so I understand you've been broken. I've been cheated on, so I understand you've been cheated on. I've had to deal with white supremacy and oppression, and so have you. So that's empathy. And so in doing the study of various religious systems, there has to be also some empathy there because we're looking at the study of humanity and how humanity processes spirituality and religion. Florida water is also good for cleansing crystals on a regular basis. Something that I carry and use um, daily and all day is Florida water. So Florida water on your crystals, that's an acceptable method. Florida water shouldn't hurt your stones at all. Selenite is also good to not only cleanse your stones, but to store your stones on. I have very large plates, um, this wide or bigger of selenite that I can then lay other crystal lined forms on. You have to be careful with selenite, however. It's hydrophobic, so your selenite should not be exposed to a whole lot of water, Florida water, or anything like that. Now, Florida water may harm selenite, and particularly the white form of selenite that we are all most commonly aware of. So selenite is good for cleansing and other crystals, just like quartz clusters are great for cleansing other crystals. Large amethyst clusters are great for cleansing and clearing other crystals. Um, Once upon a time, Yoel Adamus, I wrapped my crystals in copper. I was younger. Um, I feel even when we look at metals, we can equate them with chakras and also levels of evolution. So bronze, copper, very dense material, very earth-based material. Copper can help you to reconnect with your roots and reconnect with the earth and reconnect with Ital and nature. Rastas, for instance, like copper because of its root element. Natural people like copper. Copper also conducts energy, electricity that can then be worked into your stones. Then there was a point in my growth that I moved away from copper and moved towards silver, which is a more receptive moon base. Copper is earth based, silver is moon based, gold is sun based. So there's a hierarchy even in the energy among metals and how we use and apply metals. Um, Titanium might even be cosmic to some degree. So I'm not for or against wrapping in copper. Copper also was too soft for me. I damaged copper too easily unless it was really thick and in a much more solid forms. I do work with thick copper wire as bangles, um, as thick as this or bigger. So that doesn't quite work as well in terms of wrapping copper. I do use industrialized copper pipes. Now, I like industrialized copper pipes for making wands. I've never really showed or demonstrated my crystal wands here in this space. But I've been making crystal wands since the 80s, since the mid 80s. One of my specialties, actually. And because of the electrical currency within a wand, if you study batteries, for instance, not only the ancient Baghdad battery, but even how modern batteries work. Sometimes at the elementary school, high school, junior high level, children do experiments with potatoes and currents and electricity. So electricity is a very basic natural organic component to voodoo. And so we use copper when we want to bring electricity to something, to charge something with a current, to increase a current in something. We use copper for that. So I like copper wands, and then I will fit quartz point, which is really not easy to do, into these copper wands, and then seal them ritualistically. I'm not going to give you all my magic. My copper wands actually vibrate, hum, sing when you hold them. Nothing artificial, nothing technologically advanced. The pipe is about as technologically advanced an item that goes into my wands. But when you hold them, when you utilize them, you feel vibration. So copper is great. Copper also has to be cleansed if you're talking about mounting quartz as jewelry into copper. So, and many of you know, your copper will begin to turn earth. If it's exposed to water, your copper will begin to manifest malachite, another popular mineral. That green that begins to develop on your copper is malachite in a base form. Um, Copper will also change with your weather, your personal weather. If you're sick, if you're not healthy, if you're not processing stress well, your copper will get dark on you. You'll find that sometimes your copper will turn dark really quickly, and other times your copper will stay bright much longer periods of time. I also suggest cleaning your copper with ketchup. The acidic nature of ketchup will not only give your copper a really brilliant, clean surface, but will give it almost a rose gold hue if you clean your copper with ketchup. I prefer silver. I do have some crystals that are mounted in gold. I find that I don't use them as much as the silver because gold operates with the sun and operates on a very different frequency than my natural frequency. So, gold is the sun. It is intellect. It is reason. It is math. It is science. It is logic. It is practical. It is balanced, if you will. So my art is a unification of the two. It's a balancing, if you will, of the two. And I've gone through that period where I wore both gold and silver. I went through a period of wearing gold, silver, and copper together, wrapped, braided gold, copper, and silver. So understand your metals, understand the quantum, metaphysical, spiritual application of your metals, and keep doing it how you're doing it. Um, some people work really well with copper. I find I do much better with silver. I even do better with gold than I do with silver, even though I don't have much of a preference, a favor for silver. It's the beginning of the time. Ancestors that hold earth together, and keeping them on your ancestral shrine is always a good idea. Um, I support that. I would be careful about then utilizing those crystals in other work. So I would choose crystals specifically for your ancestral shrine that will only be associated with your ancestors and your ancestral shrine work. How to know what crystals, metals, minerals, herbs are compatible. Red Jackson, that's a great question. That's an excellent question. Um, it's not easy to explain because it requires you having a full understanding of geology, geometry, your crystal, mineral, gem, makeup, and composition. And then having that same level of awareness for your metals, for your herbs. Um, Many people are not willing to even do that amount of study. Even if you just chose one thing, I'm going to just focus on crystals. I probably did 10 years of just studying on that, separate from many of the other disciplines that I operate in. Um, so figure out where they're compatible requires a great deal of understanding what each piece is unto itself. Understanding Red Jackson, what each mineral is or herb is, and then how those things work together. We're talking about pharmaceutical level science. We are talking about science. When you think about medicines, indeed, all they are ground down stones, minerals, some of them artificial, some of them man made, but the level of awareness that it takes to bring those things together requires a great deal of study and some time. Um, and it's not an easy thing to do. Charging your crystals, Uncle Glenn, some of what we said already covers that. I strongly suggest against placing your crystals in sunlight. Direct sunlight can harm your stones for long periods of time, can bleach color from your stones, particularly crystals. So I would be careful about that. They do need equal moonlight as well as sunlight. So I would also put them in a window, a windowsill, a room with an open window, because that window can also help to protect your stone to some degree from the negative effects of the sun. Now, during the spring, during the summer, I like to take certain stones out to grassy knoll, to the grassy areas, to the beachfront, to the lake, but we're talking an hour, 2 hours of exposure. And if you've ever sat your crystals in broad sunlight for an hour, 2 hours, and then bring them immediately inside, you'll see almost a glow around them. In fact, the light bulb that I have in this lamp is supposed to mimic natural sunlight. And so some of you, when I hold the stone up like this, see a brilliance of light both within the stone and around the crystal. And so when you expose your crystals to natural sunlight in that way, in the spring and the summer months, they will hold a charge. Uh, for days, they will hold a charge. So it's not necessary to keep your crystals in direct sun for more than 2 or 3 hours at a time, but maybe weekly, bi-weekly, but not constantly and not every day. And the same thing with the moon. And the moon obviously is not going to harm your stones. We don't get enough moonlight to overexpose your stones in the way that we do the sun. So I would be very careful with the stuff with your crystals. Now stones, even your colored ones, can handle sun a little bit better than quartz. This is quartz. It's rose, but this is the same thing as this. It just has an extra structure of minerals in it that gives it this pink hue. But something like this orthocheros, for instance, could handle a lot of sun, without really harming it. It is your crystalline structures, like these two, that I'm more concerned about you exposing to too much sun, to too much direct radiation from the sun. This is a hematoid. This is quartz crystal with hematite in it. And as I told you, hematite is really red. It's not that metallic, grayish looking substance that we commonly see polished hematite showing up as. This is polished hematite. That's what this red substance is inside your quartz. So exposing this to bright, brilliant sunlight too often, too regularly, would bleach that. Will it get a charge? Absolutely. But that too much sun would bleach that. So you want to be careful with exposing them to the sun, to too much strong light. I would also keep them on a shrine, on a table, on an altar, on a structure where maybe you don't have to move them out into the light. If you can get them in a windowsill, near a window, in an environment where they can capture that naturally on a regular basis, in timing with the universe, then you'll be great. You really shouldn't have a problem. Uncle Glenn, also, we charge them by using them. And so the longer you use a stone, the more it knows you, the more you know it, the more it absorbs your energy, the more it gives you its energy, and the greater that stone will sort of wake up to you. Almost like your new computer. You don't know how to use it, your new cell phone, you don't always know all the inner secrets to it, the inner tricks to it, what might be hidden in it. You know, it takes us, there's that learning curve. So it's the same thing with bonding with your stone, but also in the charging, because really you need to know the stone before you start talking about charging it, programming it. It already carries a natural charge, but then there's also charging a stone once you've clarified your agenda, once you've clarified your request, what it is that you really are trying to do or seek with the stone. And sometimes that comes only after long periods of having already worked with stone and understanding how it lines up with your wants and your needs at any given time. Please do type your questions that you wish for me to respond to in all capital letters. Um, Shaquan Monet, I certainly appreciate you. Thank you so much for being present. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with us here in this sacred space. Are there any other questions for me? Do I sell crystal wands? Um, yes and no, Dark Girl Tantra. I sell them not like retail, and I just have a whole bunch of them lying around. They are expensive to make because I am using real gemstones. The copper um, in itself has a certain cost. Then whatever other minerals or materials, I should say, sometimes I wrap them in leather. Sometimes I wrap them in suede. Um, then I finish them off sometimes with gold or silver. Um, so it depends. They're very specialized, unique, individualized tools. So I do sell them. I do offer them as a part of practice, as a part of work, but I don't sell them like retail. If you wanted one, it would take months now for you to get it. 4 or 5 months, 6 months for you to get it in its entirety, in its completion. And it's a fine work of art. If you want more information about it, just send me an email and we can talk some more about my crystal wands. Lemon absolutely is helpful in cleansing copper. I don't find it to be as effective as the acid content in ketchup. Um, and I'm not quite sure, I'm not a chemist, exactly what that is. But that ketchup works faster, quicker, longer, I find, than just lemon juice by itself. I have tried lemon juice, but I don't find it to be quite as effective as the ketchup. Thank you, Kay Amina. I certainly do appreciate you and your attention um, to the group. I do apologize for being frozen because everything is rolling good on my end. Thank you, Queen Bonita Henderson. Shia Crothier, thank you so much for paying attention to the quality of the show. I appreciate that just as well as people paying attention to the content of the show. I didn't freeze it all on my end, so I don't know what's going on with YouTube. Everything is flowing normally on my end. So y'all know I can't always control what happens with the technology, with these sites and with the internet. I probably shouldn't be giving people commercial advertisements, but I have Cox cable. I do find it to be better than Comcast. I do find it to be better than AT&T DSL. So the buffering that we experience in this space often is internet based or YouTube based. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm glad that things have cleared up and that I'm back. I want to respond to all of your questions. Tori Indigo, I'm coming to your question next because that's a really good question. I welcome each and every one of you here. If you do have questions, comments, or requests, do type it into the chat in capital letters so that I can respond. I'm being asked now about by Tori Indigo. Is New Orleans a good place to move if you study voodoo? Obviously, absolutely. And of course, I'm going to have some prejudice about it. Now, having said that, I'm not suggesting that it's going to be easy. I'm not suggesting that it's going to somehow be the greatest breakthrough that ever happened in your life. Indeed, it might be the biggest breakthrough that ever happened in your life. It was for me. But the reality is, you got to want this voodoo. You got to study this voodoo. You got to wake this voodoo up in you, no matter where you are. Now, people assume it's New Orleans. It's voodoo, for God's sake. It's a part of the culture. But this is a Catholic American city. And many people have relegated voodoo to the realm of tourism, commercialism, entertainment, performance. Not many people see the voodoo indeed for what it is, which is a reality of culture, ethnicity, experience, religion, tradition. I would also ask, what voodoo are you trying to learn? Haitian voodoo, I would go to Haiti. West African voodoo, I would go to West Africa. Now, indeed, we manifest both those things here in Louisiana. We have Akan, we have Yoruba, we have Voodoo, we have Sangoma from southern regions of the continent of Africa. So you've got to have a call on your life, on your spirit, for the traditions in order to then squeeze the fruit and get the nectar and the juice and the value from it, no matter then where you choose to relocate. Getting in contact with authentic practitioners is difficult even in West Africa, even in Haiti. and you'll find you'll do a lot of partying and entertaining and drumming and dancing and eating, but you have to be critical about the level of study and information that you're going to get. If you're planning to move anyway, then the move could be good for you. If you're independent anyway, the move could be good for you. If you're an entrepreneur already, if you're an artist already, if you're a musician already, then absolutely the move will be good for you, because all of those things entail the voodoo. My life isn't just, the sacrifice of the chicken. My life isn't just doing ritual ceremony and doing readings. Um, Indeed, all things that I do, including masking Indian, is voodoo. Cultural performance, it is about culture and tradition. So I think that's a great question. I would move if you plan to move. I would move if you're already motivated to move. Um, um, have I tried tracing the Africans from Africa? I Ashia Crofter. I'm not understanding your question. I'm seeing try tracing the Africans from Africa. I'm not quite understanding. I need you to hit me with that again. I had to get real close up on the screen because I wasn't sure what I was seeing. I'm still not getting it. What I'm seeing is, have I ever tried tracing the Africans from Africa to their origin? So you're suggesting, if I'm reading you right, have I tried tracing the origins of Nigerians? Where did Nigerians come from? I mean, if that's what you're asking, okay, then that's a viable question. I just want to be sure I'm getting it. Um, Science say they came from Africa. Science does not suggest where they came from before Africa. And even if we think of the unified planet, once upon a time, all landmass, were one, Pangea and whatnot. And then all humanity sort of spread out from there. And we also understand that there's more than one humanoid um, that existed: Cro-Magnon, Pro-Magnon, Neanderthal, all these various forms of humans that came together at some point. That's why, I'm a very literal person from a literal perspective. I'm not understanding your question. Are you asking me, have I tried tracing where Egyptians came from before they were in Egypt? Um, I'm not getting it. We understand that based on science, based on what archaeology says, all life came out of the cradle of civilization, out of the Nile Valley, Tanzania, Kenya, you know, from that region, and sort of moved outward. Um, I don't know. Some of our humanity has been affected by alien intervention, some of us believe. So I'm not understanding. Have I tried? And what would be the value of me trying to figure out where Africans came from before Africa and how that would affect us today? I'm not understanding that. Yeah, I'm not understanding that. But I appreciate your questions. Please do type your questions in capital letters, preferably so that I don't have to put my glasses on to see them. But I certainly do appreciate all your questions, comments, requests. I also appreciate your time. The idea that any number of people would come together in a shared space like this at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for any amount of time, let alone an hour and a half, is a blessing for both me, but also for those of you who are participating and sharing here with us in this sacred space. I appreciate each and every one of your questions, comments, and requests, both on and off air. If you do have an on-air question for me, do type it in large capital letters so that I can see it and separate it from just the other conversation that is going on there in the chat. Please do also send your love offerings and your donations to my PayPal. I'm still not quite clear on YouTube, how YouTube works, what's happening with the donations once they go into YouTube. I do appreciate you for acknowledging and honoring the work with an offering. Um, Hopefully, um, things will pan out and the donation button on the YouTube channel is working effectively, and hopefully the offerings do make it where they should make it. So far, I haven't had anyone tell me yet that they've used the donation button and things worked, and I actually got the money and they saw it actually leave their account and go to mine. So thank you so much. I have a preference for PayPal, Dark Girl Tantra. I have a preference for PayPal. PayPal is almost a legitimized bank. Um, Through their experience, through their growth over the years, I found it to be the most reliable for both you and me. Um, my customers feel safe with PayPal. I feel safe with PayPal. And so I've never used any of the other apps. I've never used WhatsApp or Cash apps or any of those other apps. The only thing I'm really familiar with is PayPal in terms of transference of offerings and donations online and in this sacred space. I'm not going to hold you all very long. I did not have any real pressing uh, topics that I wanted to cover, needed to cover today. I wanted to show up for you. I want to be present for you. Many of you have gained a sense of comfort and stability from us being present here every day. And so I want to show up for you. I try not to miss days during the week unless I'm acting or filming. And I filmed a music video here yesterday, by the way, with a powerful performer. I'm going to call her a conscious performer because her music has context, has consciousness, has thought, has ideas in it that are not just carnal and fleshly. But she's a up and coming hip hop artist. Her name is Asata Jones. Many of you know Asata, and she came here yesterday and had a reading, divination done, and we filmed it for an upcoming music video of hers called Signs. Some of you have seen the Instagram post. I took a picture and posted it to Instagram. I'm going to at some point post a video of her during the process. It's sort of a behind the scenes look at the filming of the video. And you might appreciate that. So I greatly appreciate those of you who are serious about this voodoo, who understand when I say I am a celebrity psychic reader, I am a celebrity psychic reader, meaning someone who reads celebrities face to face, not someone who has a favor for celebrities and does readings on them based on the Wendy Williams and the tabloids. So I am thankful for Asada Jones, powerful, powerful spirit, and it'll show up in the words and the lyrics and the energy of this video she's working on right now for you. I appreciate Chicago. I appreciate New York. I appreciate Atlanta. I appreciate all the entertainers and artisans who support me in social media. I'm grateful for each and every one of you in helping us to elevate voodoo and spiritual practice for people of color, and particularly young people of color, as a power alternative to religion. and all the oppressive, white supremacist, sexist, discriminatory systems that many of us have been under, have had the foot on our necks for so long a period of time. And so the idea that not only do we have the new platform in which to share new ideas, but also to connect with powerful, successful, important people who also see the value in what you and I talk about here each and every day. When I look over, I'm looking at the chat because there's always people in the chat. There's always conversation in the chat. There's always movement in the chat, and people have a thirst for, a desire for something new, something empowering, something other than that which we've had to endure for such a long period of time. So when I see people like Asata Jones and many others, Wolf Gang, Wolf Jaguar, Wolf Hawk Jaguar, sorry for messing up your name, Wolf Hawk Jaguar out of Oakland, California, and many others who have turned negatives into positives for themselves and in their lives. It's just powerful. So when I get requests about help, about work, about being desperate, about having needs, I totally understand that. I totally empathize with it. It is indeed how I myself came into voodoo at a greater level. You know, you start out with a curiosity in something. You start out with a desire to know or learn something. But then as we mature and become adults and life kicks in and we have real needs that need to be addressed, the idea that we can seek that which our ancestors found not only solace in, but power in, is a mighty thing. Don't overemphasize on just the negatives of enslavement, on just the negatives of the condition, but look at the power that we were able to amass and to hold on to, even in the midst of all of that, and gain freedom, not only for Haiti, but in my opinion, for all of us in the new world. Haiti kicked a rolling snowball downhill that became liberation for all of us in the new world. So the idea that today we can apply voodoo in a way that's result oriented, in a way that's not fictional, in a way that's real, in a way that heals and helps us to gain what we need and desire in this battle for life, is a powerful thing. Is a powerful thing. But we must always respect ourselves, respect each other, respect the ancestors, and by all means respect the voodoo. No matter where you are in this journey, no matter which side of the table you sit on as the practitioner of this tradition or the receiver of this tradition, we've got to show due respect, and we do it first to ourselves, within ourselves, for ourselves. If you're really serious about this and you really believe this thing, then it has to start with you. It has to start in how you think and how you believe. And we fall into negative energy patterns, negative feelings, negative emotions too easily. And I'm talking to this group too easily to say that we believe in the power of our ancestors, to say that we believe in the power of voodoo. We're showing doubt too easily, too quickly. We're showing cracks and weaknesses in the infrastructure of our inner standing. And that cannot be masked. That cannot be hidden. We can't hide that behind a username. We can't hide that behind a cute face picture. We can't hide that because it shows up in your demonstration. What we know, what we truly understand shows up in our demonstration. I am getting extremely hungry, and as a diabetic, I need to eat. I am going to respond to any of your questions or comments that might be capitalized. Will I ever come to Pennsylvania? Perhaps. I have not been invited to Pennsylvania. I have not been sponsored in Pennsylvania as of yet. No one has organized an event or a reason, if you will, for me to be in Pennsylvania. Uh, but I share Crothier. If you can make that happen, or know folks who can make that happen, I would absolutely be more than glad to come to Pennsylvania. I've been to Pennsylvania, Philly, uh, that area since the early 80s, since at least 1982, 1983. Um, but I would be more than happy to do so. All is truly and indeed a blessing. You know, Dark Girl Tantra, I almost forgot I was even wearing this shirt. I didn't even know it was that visible on the camera. Yes, indeed. But I respect the voodoo. I demonstrate the voodoo. I wear the voodoo as much as possible in all cases and in all demonstrations. Um, do the ancestors ever sing to you at night? Yeah, the ancestors do all sorts of manifestation, demonstration, particularly when you're in relationship to them. Um, Again, as I've talked about in previous shows, we have ways of affirming, verifying, confirming such activity with the ancestors. There's a very structured, organized system of divination that we use to verify that information. But absolutely and indeed. So I am going to move forward with the show. Get me some water, hydrate, get some food into my body and my system. I appreciate each and every one of you. There's so much going on right now. It's unbelievable. Coach, I will be with you shortly. I'm going to try and speak with you later today. If not tomorrow, and I'm sure I expressed that to you in the email. I have many appointments and clients. Some of you are here in the space, so I don't want to call anybody out in particularly. I will be in touch with you today. Yesterday was very trying. It took a lot for me to get up this morning. I still probably could use a nap right now after yesterday's events, but I'm certainly here and present. I also want to announce that I am getting much closer to Mardi Gras, the time that I need to prepare to mask Mardi Gras Indian, Egun Masquerade, if you will. It's nearing. So I need your requests to be presented in email. I need you to be clear about how you wish to proceed. My time is very limited right now. There are also tourists and people who come in town annually for Carnival who now expect appointments and tours and access while we are yet still preparing for the season itself. So I greatly appreciate you and your PayPal me, the Divine Prince, also using my website, www.houseofthedivineprince.com. There is a direct PayPal me button in my website that can be found there. It's also one in the signature, the automatic signature that comes with my email responses. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I'm here for your questions, comments, and requests. I'm here to do the work. Are you here to do your work? All is truly and indeed a blessing. Until next time. Next time will be tomorrow at high noon. All is a blessing. Ashe.